Morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to this hybrid meeting of the Adults and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is open to the press and public. The meeting is being broadcast live, and a recording of this meeting will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. We welcome the use of the Welsh language in meetings, but I've had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members refrain from using the chat function, instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. May I remind members that as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by the members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask that you all please use your cameras for the duration of the meeting. Also, please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking, and please do not interrupt discussions until you have notified of your intention to speak and you have been invited to do so. Okay, thanks. So moving on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, welcome and apologies. Niall, do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Steve Evans, Gaynor James and David Williams.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, members, can I just declare as well that unfortunately Councillor Peter Jones has had a family emergency, so isn't able to attend the meeting this morning. Sorry.
Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations with regards to the item we are scrutinising today?
Chair, I'm a member of the PCC.
Okay. Any other members?
Linda.
Oh, sorry, Linda?
Yes, I'd also need to declare that I'm also a member of the Police and Crime Commission panel for the Gwent area.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's noted. Agenda item 3, the minutes of the meeting 14th of November 2024. Members reminded that these are the minutes of the meeting of the previous meeting where the committee scrutinised digital inclusion, including customer care performance. Could you please state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I will take them as agreed. Okay, that's agreed. Agenda item 4, which is the action sheet. Rebecca, could you please run us through the action sheet?
Thank you, Chair. So members will see there are 5 actions listed there on the action sheet, one of which was the responses to the recommendations from the last committee, which you have all received. There are 4 remaining then, following on from the scrutiny, looking at the employability services. I am still chasing that information and I will get that to you as soon as it is available. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Agenda item 5 is the mid-year review of work programme. And once again, I'd like see Rebecca to run us through this, please.
Thank you, Chair. So item 5 is a short report to give members the opportunity to review your work programme for the remainder of this scrutiny year. You will see from the appendices to this report, you have been provided with a condensed feeder pack containing up-to-date information from the current work programme of the committee, the Executive Forward Plan, audit referrals, the risk register and performance information, including performance against the County Plan Delivery Plan. Can I highlight to members, this is not an opportunity for you to scrutinise individual items within those feeders or the performance information, but rather offers members the opportunity to pose questions to the officers that are present online and in their chamber this morning as to any issues or concerns you may have within that information that may warrant you reprioritising your basket of items for the remaining 2 meetings that you have for this committee. You will notice from the Vision Impact that the 2 items that you had selected at Visioning that are coming up is homelessness prevention, with the key question being how is the Council addressing its statutory obligation in reducing homelessness and current demand on housing services while developing services to deliver the Council's rapid rehousing transitional plan. And then the final one selected was demand and flow through the system adult services, And the key question for that item was, how is the redesign of adult services performing in reducing demand and improving flow through the system? So as you'll see, members, there are some officers, heads of services online, and Dave is here. Do you have any questions relating to any of the information contained within those appendices that you'd like to pose? Can I ask officers, is there anything you'd like to draw members' attention to, or whether there's anything you would warrant them considering?
Just to say that we've been through the feeder packs ourselves. Whether by luck or judgment, it feels to me like the two items that you've selected for the remaining sessions remain the most appropriate items to pick up. That's based on looking at the position that we're in from a performance perspective, as well as those priorities that are coming up from a policy perspective too. So I wouldn't be suggesting any changes to the programme.
Okay, thank you. No hands raised. So at this point then, I would like to thank the officers very much and ask them to leave the meeting, please. Right, agenda item 6, a Safer Torvine Community Safety Partnership. Before we commence discussions, I would like to welcome Kate Williams, who is Group Manager, Public Services and Support Unit, Kath Jones, Community Safety Lead, Public Services Support Unit, Chief Inspector Steve Warden, and Inspector Lee Stacco of Gwent Police. I probably didn't pronounce that right, did I, Lee? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. I'll now hand over to officers to give a very brief introduction to the report before we commence questioning. Thank you.
Many thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you for your time this morning. We're looking forward to discussing the Safer Torvine Strategic Partnership with you this morning. Before we start, I just wanted to thank our elected member for Community Safety, Councillor Peter Jones, who's an active member of Safer Torvine, for all his support for the Community Safety Partnership and our Community Safety team. I'd also like to thank Catherine Jones, Inspector Lee Stacco and Chief Inspector Stevie Warden for all their hard work and commitment in making Torvine a safer place to live. Safer Torvine is the strategic partnership established under the Crime and Disorder Act 1998. When the Gwent PSB, the Public Service Board, was formed, the Community Safety Partnership was reinstated in Torvine to ensure that there was still a strong focus on local community safety priorities. The partnership includes representatives from the police, local authorities, fire and rescue services, health services and probation services, along with other relevant partners. The primary objective of Safer Torvine is to develop and implement strategies to tackle crime and disorder and antisocial behaviour with the aim of creating safer and more cohesive communities. The Community Safety Team are the operational delivery arm of Safer Torvine, with the team being responsible for the oversight and management of local delivery partnerships, such as the Community Safety Hub and our MAPI meetings, which is the Multi-Agency Pupil Interventions. Members are invited to scrutinise the Safer Torvine partnership process and functionality. It is important to highlight that members are not being asked to scrutinise the day-to-day activities of the team or the partners of the Community Safety Partnership, as previous scrutiny sessions on the activity of the Community Safety Hub and MAPI have already taken place. Members will note that the report is not overloaded with data. The community safety landscape is vast, so the report focuses on the current priorities of the Community Safety Partnership that were agreed by the statutory partners of the CSP. If there is an area of focus that members would like more data on, I'm sure that we'll be able to supply that outside of the meeting. Key priorities over the past 12 months have included reducing antisocial behaviour, addressing vaping amongst young people and the links to escalation in ASB and exploitation, and reducing serious violence in schools. The report highlights the impact of various positive interventions, such as targeted problem solving in hotspot areas, voluntary agreements with young people, and the implementation of a comprehensive action plan to tackle vaping. The report also discusses the barriers to progress, primarily related to funding and outlines future priorities, including improving data use and seeking additional resources to support young people at risk. We welcome your engagement and invite members to ask any questions they may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move on to questioning, and question number one, question for myself, relevant paragraph 3.1. The Wellbeing Objective B, it says we will support our local culture and heritage and make Torfaen a thriving, safe and attractive place to live and visit. Our intention by 2027, we will have reduced the level of antisocial behaviour and serious violence within our communities. Is this intention prioritised sufficiently amongst all other county plan objectives?
So lots of our priorities are derived from our county plan, from our Marmot Master Plan, and also from other kind of needs assessment that are formed through the police and the health service. So this priority, community safety is a focal point of our county plan. So the breadth of community safety activities is vast. So, you know, we want to concentrate on those things that we feel the Safer Torfaen partnership can act on and deliver itself, really. So although we work within the confines of lots of other plans, safe and cohesive priorities being a key factor on that, the Safer Torfaen partnership focuses on those priorities that we've established within that. The community safety team itself conducts the community safety officers, but it's also the community cohesion team. So we bring in that kind of element through our day-to-day working as well. I'm not sure if that was a bit round the things. I answered what you wanted from that. Fine.
We'll move on to question 2 now, and I'd like to ask Councillor Linda Clarkson, please.
Good morning, panel. Associate members, 3.7 in the report. Have we identified any gaps in membership, and how can members have more of a voice or input into the work of the Safer Torfaen setting of priorities particularly?
Thank you, Councillor. So the partnership there, we've listed the statutory members of the Community Safety Partnership. So they're core members that have to make up the partnership, and we need to be core for meetings to take place. So those members need to be part of the partnership. But also within the partnership, there are, I've just mentioned the community cohesion team. So there are members within the community cohesion team that sit on the partnership. So we can co-opt lots of members. There are internal partners that sit on there as a local authority, so that is quite vast. When we first reinstated Safer Torfaen, we did question whether at every meeting we needed to have somebody, for example, from trading standards. Did we need somebody, you know, from licensing? There's a whole host of people that could come to all of those meetings. But what we've done is, when we're looking at the priorities, we can co-opt people to come and attend those meetings to speak about specific areas. But they may not always be a member of the partnership that come to all the meetings. One of the areas that I think that we need to look at going forward then is to making sure that we've got colleagues from, you know, education and our school settings and that kind of thing represented in that, at those meetings on a regular basis. Although they are in our other kind of partnership meetings, I think it's core then that they are attending at those meetings. But we've got good representation from, you know, our health colleagues across the board. And as I said in my introduction, Councillor Peter Jones is an active member of the group, so we are able to address kind of any member concerns through our elected member. But if there is anything that members feel are kind of a priorities, they've got an open door with the community safety team. If anything that they think that we need to address, we will absolutely kind of look at and discuss in partnership with the team.
Okay.
And just to come back, does that include sort of involvement in setting the priorities in future?
I think it would be, for example, what would that priority be? So I think if there was an emerging issue that perhaps we hadn't been made aware of, we'd hope really that we were made aware of those issues, that it would come to the team and that we would already know about that issue rather than us being caught off guard that there's something that we hadn't heard of. So we look at horizon scanning, we look at potential issues in the community, whether that be related to antisocial behaviour, substance misuse. But if there is something that members feel that they wanted us to kind of focus on, you know, we'd welcome that conversation. So hopefully we wouldn't be missing something that would be discussed as a priority. But absolutely, if there is something, that we'd welcome that conversation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clarkson. Question number 3, let me invite Councillor Nick Horler, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. This is about the Safer Torfaen as a strategic partnership that provides governance and accountability structure over the community safety team. My question is, this sets out the various groups and bodies within the community for safety and governance, the structure. Is there any element of the duplication across these bodies?
Thanks, Councillor. No, so Safer Torfaen is a strategic board of the statutory partners, community safety team and the hub of the operational delivery arm of Safer Torfaen, as well as our day-to-day business in community safety. So that there is no duplication because they have 2 different work programmes.
Okay, Councillor Horler. Okay, thank you. On to question 4, I'd like to invite Councillor David Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. Safer Torfaen's meetings are held quarterly, and its governance structure relies on multi-agencies. How does the partnership ensure swift, decisive action between meetings, especially during crises?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think it's a testament to the Community Safety Partnership itself that those meetings are not the only interactions that we have with each other. We meet regularly. We have our Community Safety Hub here in the building, so Gwent Police are co-located with the team. They meet regularly within that, so there should never be any occasion that we would only discuss something when they come back to those meetings. We have good working relationships with the health, the area planning board. Lots of those discussions take place out of that. So we wouldn't want, and it hasn't really got to the point that we've come back to a community safety partnership meeting and something hasn't kind of been progressed because we've waited 3 months for that action to take place. Lots of work is kind of done behind the scenes. You know, Catherine and the team linking very much with those partnerships. So it wouldn't be that every 3 months that's the only chance that we get to discuss that.
Thanks. I just got 2 subs, if that's okay, Chair. What specific examples of time-critical decisions demonstrate the effectiveness of the current governance model? And how does the local delivery group ensure accountability when it lacks the legal mandate to discharge community safety duties?
So by the legal mandate, the Community Safety Partnership, the legal mandate of that is the partnership structure itself, rather than to hold the partners kind of accountable to that. So if there was an example of something that wasn't being done under the Community Safety Partnership, our structure then to progress that then would be, it used to be to the Safe Gwent Partnership, but that isn't functioning at the moment. So anything that we need to kind of escalate to that would go to the Gwent Public Service Board. So there's a safe and cohesive element of that we could escalate that to. But as I said, hopefully that wouldn't go to that, but those governance arrangements are in place. A paper has gone to the Gwent PSB around community safety. That is a priority for the Gwent PSB, across Gwent. And that is something now that the Safer Gwent partnership, that they want to kind of reinstate to have that extra level. Because as you can imagine, the Gwent PSB deals with absolutely everything. And we felt really that community safety, if it's not a priority within that, it was being diluted as the Gwent PSB. So that is one of the reasons why we re-established Safer Torfaen, to make sure that we've got that local kind of accountability of what we're doing, rather than just the work being done for the Gwent PSB.
Okay, Councillor Thomas. Okay, lovely, thank you. Question 5 was answered really in Kate's opening address, so we'll move on to question 6 and invite Councillor Nicola, please.
Thank you. This is about 4.2. The priorities seem to be aligned with addressing prominent young persons' concerns, community safety issues. Is this by design in terms of prevention activities? Okay. In 4.2, we talk about the priorities that seem to align with the addressing the predominantly younger persons' concerns, community safety issues. Is this by design in terms of preventative activities? Sorry.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, well, the majority of the work of my team is looking at youth antisocial behaviour, and that's because we're set up to work in a prevention and intervention kind of way. If we're dealing with adult antisocial behaviour, we've missed the preventative side. So we put a lot of our resources and our intervention and our time into preventing young people escalating through the antisocial behaviour process and ultimately ending up in the criminal justice system. So our main target is keeping young people out of the criminal justice system, which is why our interventions and the majority of our priorities are youth-focused.
Yes, certainly, Councillor.
So the 3 priorities that you focus on is obviously antisocial behaviour, vaping and violence and reduction in schools. I get that. Within antisocial behaviour is a broad spectrum of antisocial issues within that. I'm a little bit of an environmentalist in one way or the other. I seem to be that. My question is, what discussions are talked about when you talk about antisocial behaviour to that age group about littering the streets of our communities?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. We do a lot of that kind of work with our primary school children through our primary mapping meetings. So it's the lower level things around littering, being safe and aware on the road. We do projects with play service as well through pop-up play clubs that we're running, through play schemes around being a good citizen. It's the very soft approach to prevention that we take with the primary age children. And obviously we've done projects with Keep Wales Tidy in the past as well, where we've done litter picks in the area with some of our targeted groups. So it is something that we look at, definitely.
Yes, come back in.
Let's come back. Over the last couple of years, because of vaping, we've seen an awful lot of more vaping pieces of equipment within the streets. Would it be something that we could put in as a recommendation that not only do you talk to the primary school groups, but you talk to the middle school groups as well, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so that's part of our vaping action plan anyway, in terms of disposing of the vapes. With the ban coming in at some point through government, we're hoping that will be reduced. Some of the things we've been looking at through the vaping group as well is stickering, it's known as. So where young people are buying the vapes, they're taking off the sticker to activate it, and then they're sticking it in certain locations in the borough. So we're able then to target those areas as high traffic areas, young people using vapes. So we're looking at bins, we're looking at which schools are they, is it the second school kids going to the shop, you know, Oakham Bran, and then putting some targeted messages into those schools through our subgroup.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hawler. On to question 7, and again, I'd like to ask Councillor David Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. With only 3 priorities chosen from 2024, antisocial behaviour, which I actually hate that term, vaping and violence reduction in schools, what criteria were used to exclude other pressing community safety concerns, and to what extent are other concerns still monitored by Safer Torfaen?
So, as you can imagine, the priority list could be huge, couldn't it? You know, there are so many sort of competing demands, especially when you look at police data, the calls that we get. We, at our community safety hubs, and the team attend the tasking meetings. There's lots of kind of community safety priorities that are discussed at those meetings and are prioritised by Gwent Police for their and the plans that go around that. But as a community safety partnership, we look at what we could do with the partners around the table as a collective response to tackle something that is not just a demand, but that is achievable, that we can look at our partners to support. So we don't want it to be a single priority, that it's only for Gwent Police, because we don't need we still need a partnership, but actually the police are dealing with that. They have their own priorities. Health have their own priorities. The substance misuse team have their own priorities. But what we want to do as a partnership is to try to look at those key things that we really think that we could focus on within that year then to really drive and make a difference with. So it's not to preclude other areas that are of topic. We'll look at those and we'll discuss those. And at the beginning of the Safer Torfaen meetings, Gwent Police go through a presentation around their priority areas, all the things that's causing them, whether that's around sexual violence, if it's theft, if it's all of those kind of priorities. But we just focus on what we think we can achieve within the Safer Torfaen partnership. And that's why for this year, those were the three main priorities that we felt that we could tackle as a community safety partnership.
Yes, so,
Chair, can I just provide an update from a Gwent Police perspective to the Councillor as well, please? Kate is exactly right in what she said. Obviously, the nature of policing, we need to be flexible with what we focus on, because that can change weekly. So just for a bit of reassurance, every week we meet locally as a neighbourhood team and a response team to look at what we need to focus on for the next few weeks. That can change daily or weekly. I think the important thing is, yes, we are focused on those three priorities, but that is certainly not just the three priorities we're focusing on. So if we had a particular issue with burglary offences or with certain theft type offences, we will put a plan in play to try to address that alongside of our commitment to focus on the three areas that we focus on as a team. So we do look at a host of different offence types over the 12 months, which generally they're driven by data, and we rely heavily on the data to identify what we need to focus on.
okay, thanks. Just for some extra information then, what mechanisms are in place to incorporate feedback from underrepresented communities into Torfaen?
From a policing perspective, I rely on the community support officers and my ward managers to engage with those groups, and we do meet with various groups daily, weekly, monthly, from underrepresented parts of the community, and that is generally fed back into us via intelligence or via our tasking meetings, and that generally forms that arm of our engagement. Thanks, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Move on to question 8 and invite Councillor Linda Clarkson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. When we were in our pre-meeting, we were talking about local businesses. So the question I've got is, has Safer Torfaen consulted or engaged with local businesses to gather any information or intelligence regarding concerns that they may have with community safety, which may feed into priorities going forward?
Thanks, Councillor Clarkson. The answer is yes, we engage with local businesses, mainly in town centres, but our local shops we see as part of the community, so they're engaged with the CSOs, with the feet on the ground, really. So in Cwmbran, the town centre, we've got the Business Against Crime Partnership, which is a consortium of local businesses, police, trading standards, and they take on board any concerns being raised. So, for example, where there was a lot of youth disorder in Cwmbran Town Centre, that was brought to the attention of the Community Safety Hub. But on top of that, there was also a lot of shoplifting offences. So that's another piece of work that was focused on by Safer Torfaen. Again, Pontypool Town Centre, more recently, we've had a lot of issues with, again, youth antisocial behaviour. Lee, I don't know if you can come in off the back and just say some of the successes, but again, that's supporting the local businesses. That's what they're telling us is a problem, because there's not really the residents in the area to ring us and let us know the problem. So it is information coming direct from businesses, so there are relationships there.
Thanks, Chair. Just only a further update in relation to that. I suppose if we use Pontypool Town Centre as an example, we'll probably all be aware of the media story back last summer. identify an increase in antisocial behaviour, which was clearly there. So the critical thing that my team will do is go out and engage with the businesses and parts of the community to try to identify who is responsible, what is going on, when it's going on, and what we can maybe look at as a partnership to try to make a difference. Because ultimately what we want to do is problem solve these issues. We don't want to just go there, deal with that issue, and find ourselves going back in 2, 3, 4 months' time. So that's where we work really, really closely. And I think, Kate, you touched on it earlier, we look at the interventions. We certainly don't want to be prosecuting these young people. In the first instances, we will look at what interventions we can put into place to stop that behaviour and to prevent it, because that's ultimately what we want to try and do, to try and stop the offending further on down the line. So when we look at Pontypool, I think that's a really good example of where the partnership worked really, really well together. And I base my opinion on that. The amount of ABC referrals we put through, the amount of meetings that were held, the amount of support interventions that were put in place were phenomenal. Saying that, I'm not naive enough to know that there are instances whereby we do have to take action. We made a few arrests on the back of the issues we had in Pontypool Town Centre. We used bail conditions and a few other bits and pieces that were available to us. So the positive messages are, with that, we made a real difference to the amount of incidents we were seeing on Pontypool Town. They reduced dramatically. And the pleasing thing for me, on a personal level, is some of the feedback from the businesses was really complimentary. And I think that's where I can judge what difference we've made, when the businesses will say, or the residents will say, we've seen a difference, and things are a lot better than what they were.
Okay, thank you, Inspector. Okay, Dave? Oh, okay, Linda? I know. Okay. That's the end of the background questions. So, I don't know if members, would you like to put forward any recommendations at this point, please? Councillor Hawler?
Yeah, I would like to put a recommendation that all youths within our communities have discussions about the implications of littering within our communities. I think what you've said earlier about the primary schools, but I also see the middle-aged groups also loitering and littering at the same time. And my concern long-term is that if they get away with it now, that will progress in their lifetimes, and we are now seeing an awful lot more littering within the communities. And if we can start preventing it at the base of the journey of life, then I think future communities will have better opportunities to have tidier places to live in. So I would like that as a recommendation, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hawler. No other hands up. No other hands up. So we move on to question 9, our antisocial behaviour. Obviously, Inspector touched on Pontypool back in the summer, and there are other instances throughout the borough. But in the report, like Blenavon was identified as a key hotspot area. Was this based on incidents of antisocial behaviour being higher or more serious in Blenavon, or it being more localised geographical area, based on the potential for intervention to provide more immediate positive outcomes? So,
thank you, Councillor. So, Blenavon was identified as a hotspot because of increased antisocial behaviour reported to the police, from the businesses, from the communities. The types of antisocial behaviour we were seeing were some of the worst I've seen in my 20 years as working in community safety. There were vulnerable people being targeted by groups of young people at the surgery. There were pregnant ladies. There were people having like some serious diagnoses at the doctors and coming out and being abused. So that is the reason that Blenavon was. It wasn't chosen as a hotspot by Safer Torfaen. ASB was the priority. But through the Community Safety Hub, that's why Blenavon is one of the areas we focused on because of those high levels. And that's why then Pontypool Town Centre kind of was next, and Cwmbran is always there. So it was incidents.
okay, thank you. Councillor Hawler?
Yeah, sorry, from the point of view of being one of the members that represent Blenavon, this was very welcome to see at the time. We have seen, I believe, a decrease in antisocial behaviour within the area. I'm not reading so many issues. I'm not hearing so many issues. And the intervention that was caused then, I think Glenavon is a better place now than it was when we were going through what we were going through, because we all know around the table that the situation that was getting was almost like a pandemic of issues that we were having to deal with. And I believe now that it's eased. I'm not saying it's finished, but I think it's eased. And that's because of all the hard work that the group has actually done to do that. So I congratulate you on that. Thank you. Cheers.
Yes, certainly.
Just to add that, I mean, there were so many sort of positive interventions, and that the team and the partnership, the hub in Glenavon, the youth services got involved, that really had a huge impact on that. But some of the things we sometimes can't get away from is that sometimes we have to go for injunctions, we have to go for court measures. When we've done everything that we can through the prevention model, there does come a point when the behaviour in that is that bad that to protect the community, we do have to look at those court interventions to be able to make that impact. And although, you know, we try to do everything not to get to that stage, sometimes in those areas when it's high antisocial behaviour and crime, sometimes the preventative measures in that, we've exhausted all of those, so we just have to move to court action then. So just wanted to include that.
Okay, thank you. Move to question 10, Councillor Nicola, please.
So this talks about 4.2.2. Do we monitor the outcomes for each intervention? Example, 21 warning letters were sent out to parents. Did we monitor how many of those were still went on to be involved in antisocial behaviour incidents? Is it that the role of Safer Torfaen to measure? Is it the role of Safer Torfaen to measure and monitor the individual's interventions and outcomes?
Thanks, Councillor. It's not the role of Safer Torfaen to monitor the individuals, but it is the role of my team to monitor the individuals. How we monitor our strike process is through our county plan, through reports back to the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, our hub meetings. So how we report is 21 warning letters went out in a 6-month period. Of those, 5 had a second letter. So we had so many successes. Of those 5, 2 went on to a contract, 1 injunction, and that's how we monitor it, and that's how we report back on county plan.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hawler. Question 11, I invite Councillor Linda Clarkson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's mentioned in point 4.2.4 of the report that positive youth engagement activity will be continued to run the sessions in the area whilst funding is available. Obviously, funding is a concern. So the question is, what is the level of risk that funding will cease? Do we need to evidence outcomes to ensure we can secure certain funding streams?
Thanks, Councillor. I think funding is always a risk for us. I mean, we're, you know, it's a testament to Torfaen Council that have maintained the core funding of the community safety team. There are other local authorities that don't have the team to be able to do this. So whilst the team can look at the priorities, you know, analyse the data and look at what needs to be done, the one thing we don't have funding for then are the interventions. That's something that we're applying for funding. And I've got to say, if there's funding available, Kath will fund it. And I really do think that is a testament to Kath and the team to make sure that the interventions that we need, that we seek the appropriate funding for. But that's never long-term funding. We don't have long-term funding from the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner. We don't have long-term funding for those things from Welsh Government. But under the Shared Prosperity Fund, we've had funding through the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner for targeted interventions. It's not long-term, but what the team always makes sure to do is that if we're putting these interventions in, that the young people, for example, I'm sure Kath will talk about the mentoring service now, but we've got those interventions, but rather than have a young person that is reliant on that intervention, there's always the exit strategy, because we're very conscious that funding will go, and the last thing we want to do is have a young person or an adult reliant on a service that we take from them. So I know with the mentoring service, there is that kind of exit plan. So although it is a risk, we make sure that we manage what the interventions are within the confines of that. So if the funding is withdrawn, those young people aren't left high and dry.
Okay, thank you. Is it okay, Councillor Clarkson?
Yeah, that's pretty much
Okay.
exactly what I was hoping to hear, that it is managed
Right,
somehow.
okay,
Thanks.
thank you. More to question 12 now. Councillor David Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. So it's the same section of the report, 4.24. While initiatives like Positive Futures have engaged with 1,514 young people, what evidence exists that these activities have created long-term behavioural change rather than short-term compliance?
Thanks, Councillor. Measures like that we need to look at in 10 years' time. So we would have to track every young person that was engaged with to see the long-term impact on their behaviour. What we can do with the cohorts we do know, so those on our strike process, is monitor their behaviour. So by engaging with Positive Futures, if we had any ASB referrals, anyone from the community phoned about that young person. So we are able to track the ones we know. But the Positive Futures is also preventative, so any young person can attend from the area. It's not just our targeted groups. So we monitor them where we can and where we know them. But obviously, the long-term behaviour change is something we'd have to look at in the future.
Chair, can I just give a quick update on that question to the Councillor? I think, from my perspective, it's really important as well to be mindful of, if you say you have a group of young people, some of which will be involved in the process maybe, there will be someone on the periphery who may not be, who may be at risk of that. So these interventions, I think, are key, because sometimes those young people on the periphery will go to them and it will take them away from a road we don't want them to go down. So sometimes it's really hard to measure the effectiveness of them because they're not in the system with us. They may never go into the system, and that may be because of one of these interventions that we put into place. Does that make sense, Councillor?
Yeah. So, surprisingly, I've got two supplementary questions for both, if that's okay. So, whilst we're on about tracking, because tracking is important, what tracking mechanisms are in place to follow the progress of young participants after their involvement in these programmes? And the second question that I've got is, how does Safer Torfaen address broader economic factors contributing to youth and antisocial behaviour?
So I can take the first question. In terms of tracking, we've got so many young people involved in our interventions that as a team we wouldn't be able to track them. But in terms of exit strategies, I know because Positive Future sits under our sports development, we would possibly be able to find out through registers how many have gone on to mainstream activities with sports development. We also work really closely with the local football clubs, the local youth clubs, the local rugby clubs, to try and get an exit strategy for a young person. So if they're really enjoying basketball, we'll try and, refer them to local mainstream clubs. I suppose that's the only tracking that we know, if I'm honest, Councillor.
Can I just come in on that one? Just one of the things that we're trying to do, looking through the new prevention model that the council are looking at, and looking at those kind of long-term, the journey then of the child, and sharing data, data sets talking, our systems talking to another system. For example, we've got our own system within community safety. It doesn't feed directly into the youth offending service, but the relationship that we have, we know those, but it's not necessarily documented anyway. So that's kind of something that we really want to look at, to be able to track that journey, rather than they've been within our cohort for 6 months, we haven't seen them again for 6 months, we think they're okay, but we just might not know that they're okay. So having that focused journey of the child longer term is absolutely something, I think, with that prevention model that we're hoping to do.
Okay, thank you. Question 13. Back up in Blaenavon again. But based on the positive impact we've seen in Blaenavon, with the interventions, etc. Are these going to be rolled out more broadly across the borough now?
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, so again, Blenavon was just an example. We could have used Pontypool Town Centre with the warning letters, the voluntary agreements, the police action, the injunctions. We did get one young person on an injunction in Pontypool Town Centre. So it's a problem-solving approach. It links in with the police plans, and it's something that it is replicated up and down the borough as and when is required. The host of interventions available as well in terms of mentoring positive futures can also be moved. So we've done quite a lot in Pontypool Park, we've done a lot down in Cwmbran, CCYP, Blenheim School. So it is a workable model that can be replicated, and it has been.
Okay, thank you very much. That takes us on to the end of the section of antisocial behaviour. So I'd just like to ask members again, have you got any, or would you like to put any recommendations forward on this antisocial behaviour? Yeah, Linda Clarkson, Councillor Clarkson, you've got a hand up.
Yeah, I've potentially got a recommendation, but I'd like to do the next section to see whether or not that fits in with the rest of the questioning strategy, if possible.
Okay, no problem at all. Councillor Hawler?
This section of this report has showed positive outcomes about antisocial behaviour and what's happening. We understand it's happening, but the general public don't. Is there any way of actually getting some nice, interesting comms out saying, hey guys, you know, this is happening, we're doing this, this is achieving it. It's putting a positive into the communities to say that the communities potentially are safer because of the antisocial behaviour that has reduced. Could we have some form of positive comms out saying, hey, we are dealing with it, and this is the outcomes of it, and this is putting you in a better position as a resident of the community that you live in, please. Thank you.
Come back on that. I think we've always kind of said, we don't blow our own trumpet enough, and the police, the partnership and that, of all the positive things that are being done. I know the team put comms messages out around things that we're doing, but not really, to the full extent that's available to show those really, really kind of positive outcomes. But yeah, so I absolutely kind of take that on board, that is something that we could, we could push a lot more.
I think the community would understand antisocial behaviour better by telling them the positives. We get so many negatives within communities through social media, and let's turn that negative into a positive by the good work that you're currently doing. Thank you.
Chair, can I just give a quick update?
Yes, certainly.
Perspective. Just in relation to that, Councillor, we're looking at a new database called the Neighbourhood Alerts Database, and the beauty of that scheme is it will be force-wide. So say if you look at Blenavon, for example, residents of Blenavon can sign up to it. They raise antisocial behaviour as a concern to them. We can then release a message to all of those residents, which can provide updates on what we've done in partnership together, and they will go directly to members of the community. So we're looking to roll it out, I think, possibly springtime, but it's a really exciting opportunity for us to allow us access to the communities of Gwent, and directly respond to issues they raise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much. Thank you very much.
I just want to be able to erase negativity within social media. I want to see positivity. And if we don't have positivity, then the world's not going to turn around. And the interventions that we're asking for right now, I think, is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawler. Move on to the next section, which is vaping, and question 14. Invite Councillor Linda Clarkson again, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, 4.3.1 of the report states that links to criminal exploitation amongst young people and antisocial behaviour. Vaping amongst young people was also made a priority. So what we were wondering, if you can explain in a little more detail the links between criminal and exploitation, antisocial behaviour and vaping, just so that we understand it a bit more clearly.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So what we've seen in Torfaen and nationwide, is young people being used by criminal gangs or groups of criminals, because we don't always have gangs, as you would know them, to sell vapes in schools. And what happens is they start off selling the vapes for these gangs, and the gangs promise them money or new trainers, and then eventually they get them to start selling drugs or alcohol. There's been a few operations I know locally, as in Gwent, where young people have been exploited, where vapes were used as the carrot and the stick. So I'll just sell these for me in school, and then it escalates and it escalates further. And antisocial behaviour is seen as a precursor in behaviour for all kinds of criminal activities. So if you're involved in antisocial behaviour, there's more of a chance you'll be involved in violence, in drugs, in vaping. So the reason we focus on it is because antisocial behaviour is a priority and a statutory duty for us to reduce. We believe by reducing the antisocial behaviour, we'll reduce the chances and the risk factors to young people involved in other criminal activity. But there is a link between vaping and criminal exploitation. It's a nationwide issue at the moment.
So if I could just come back on that briefly. So this is that evidence that identifying the risks and the preventative model is working on evidence-based information.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a number of reports. There's one commissioned by the Youth Endowment Fund that looks at serious violence and the risk factors that you need to address to reduce serious violence. And within there, antisocial behaviour is like the golden thread throughout it. And again, bringing it locally. So we were seeing in some of our schools that young people were in there selling vapes. They were being confiscated by teachers. Those young people were then actually breaking down doors to try and get these vapes. They were hiding them in the ceilings or in the walls of the toilet, so then criminal damage was coming from it. And we don't know if that's through fear of, if I don't sell these vapes, what's these older groups going to do to me, or if they had a nicotine addiction. So it really spans across the whole portfolio of community safety.
A quick policing perspective in relation to that, Chair. I'll just reinforce what Kath has said. Kath is 100% right. And what we see, a lot of our vulnerable young people who are involved in the use of vapes will tend to get them from other persons who are linked to more serious crimes or organised crime groups. And some of the quantities of vapes we've seen locally seized by trading standards clearly shows that link to organised crime, because we're talking phenomenal amount of money and a phenomenal amount of items. And what we want to try and stop is that progression of these young people, don't we? Starting off from buying vapes, and then they get sort of tied into that particular person that's selling them, then they get asked to go on and sell drugs. And as Kath says, that's the sort of chain that we're trying to break with that.
Yes, certainly, Kate.
Thank you. Just to add to that, I mean, when we're looking at vaping, when that kind of came through as a priority, it's a huge health priority. There's a huge health risk attached to this, and we don't really know the full extent of that. And I think it's something as a nation that we kind of sleepwalked into, that all of a sudden there's so many, bubblegum vapes and this. It was just almost being advertised for children, wasn't it? So I think there's a huge health issue in that, around that. But as the partnership and working together under our Marmot master plan of looking at those wider determinants of health, so it's not just, it's what's causing those health issues. Well, the wider determinants of that are things like vaping, the links with ASB, so it's looking at that holistic picture around something that as a partnership I think has been a real, a tangible priority that we've been able to make a real difference around, and hopefully with all the kind of interventions that the World Health Organization and legislation and that are put in place, but through our own means as well, the next generation hopefully won't be in the situation that we're in now. So I think just as a partnership, that was a real key priority, that we all kind of had a part to play in that, looking at those wider determinants.
Councillor Dave Thomas, you want to come in, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm guessing there's success stories in schools. So I just wanted to know, how is success defined for each intervention, and what benchmarks have you set for 25-26?
In terms of vaping, Councillor, or in general, for all interventions? Yeah, so again, it's all measured by reductions in incidents in schools in relation to vaping. We'll have teachers who will give us anecdotal reports on how things have gone. We also measure the data through My Concern, which is something that the schools use to record different incidents. So we can see vaping is one of those measures on there that we've asked for. So we can see if vaping use or being caught with a vape is coming up and down. We do need a more robust reporting mechanism from schools to us to share data, and that is something that we are currently exploring. But it's the same with all our interventions, is reduction, is police data, is community data, is information from the local councillors on how the interventions are working, and also from the young people themselves. With some of our interventions, we like to do distance travelled measurements, so we'll ask them how they felt at the start of it, how they felt their behaviour was, and then we measure that over a period of time, usually without mentoring, where it's a small cohort where they're having one-to-one interventions.
So just to quickly come back, and how are you going to address the gaps in data collection, especially in schools, to better measure violence and other issues?
That is something that we're looking at. That is very likely to be a priority for Safer Torfaen going forward, looking at the gaps in data, and we're hoping that working with colleagues in education, we can come up with a better method of data sharing. We've got data sharing agreements in place, so that's not a barrier. I think it's just sometimes the time is taking individual staff to collect those figures for us to share. Is there a better way, as in Kate said, about sharing systems and data sets going forward?
Okay, thank you. I think we incorporated question 15 within question 14, so we move on to question 16. Councillor Linda Clarkson.
Thanks again, Chair. 4.3.5 of the report talks about free training, which was sourced for teachers, which was extended to partners to allow youth services to attend. All youth service staff have attended this training. So the question is, has Safer Torfaen received and reviewed any feedback on the effectiveness and quality of this training?
Thanks, Councillor. So I've spoken to the schools and to youth service who attended the training. I also sent a member of my team on there in case there was an opportunity for trainer to further it out. It was well received. We have been able to source now from Ash Wales the resource packs that they used during the training, so that the schools can give to other teachers. It's a free resource that can be shared around, and they do feel more confident now when speaking to young people around vaping, and it's not just the health implications, but they touched on all the things that we've just discussed as well, and the links to antisocial behaviour. At our next Safer Torfaen, I will be giving the partnership a full update on our vaping action plan and subgroup, which included the training, because it's no longer going to be a priority, because all the work we can do as a partnership is being done. It just needs to be monitored to make sure that that work's still going ahead. So they will be having a full update on feedback.
Okay, thank you very much. Move on to question 17. Councillor Nick Hall, please.
Thank you. Trading Standards have completed a number of operations that has led to closures of premises linked to the sale of sales of illegal vapes. What has been the follow-ups to this activity? Has sanctions resulted in repeat operations? And how does Safer Torfaen link with this activity?
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, so I'm not sure if there's been repeat operations, but at our next meeting, actually, Safer Torfaen Trading Standards have offered to give us a full report on their operations, and we were hoping it was ready for the last meeting, but the report wasn't quite finished. So we will be having a full update on the different operations that's happened, and then I will be able to answer the question on repeat offenders, but I'll have to get back to you on that because I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, Council, just only a quick update just in relation to our involvement with trading standards. I think we have seen it, I've seen it on one occasion where trading standards will go in and execute a warrant. They will see some illegal vapes, shall we say, prosecute those individuals, but then those individuals linked to others do manage to open up a new premises, if that's the question you were asking. Yeah. So I think the difficulty for us then is we just got to react to that, and we just got to persistently keep working with trading standards and executing these warrants in those areas. They're very, very good trading standards in Torfaen. They've done some fantastic jobs, and they've taken a lot of vapes from the streets of Torfaen, and I'm sure they'll provide that in that report, Kath. But they're very, very proactive in what they do, but we do see it sometimes, see a repeat of people linked to possibly these organised crime groups. We'll reset up and try again, but as long as we focus on it, we make a difference with that.
So Lee, that's welcome to hear, because you've discussed previously in this conversation today that the legal activities of vapes is taking it into further legal activities that go into the youth, that go into the adults. And surely right now, if there's a preventative measure to eradicate that, life will be a lot easier long term for all of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Move on to the last question in this section, and that's question 18. Councillor Linda Clarkson, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is looking at sort of a wider evaluation of what we're all trying to achieve here. It's 4.3.6 of the report states measuring success will be part of the wider government strategy. So the question is, are we expecting, or will there be any government advice or reports put forward with baselines and measures by which we can actually evaluate success in this area? And if that is likely, how and will community safety partnerships such as Safer Torfaen be consulted on the development of appropriate measures?
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, so quite a lot of the team spend time responding to consultations, whether that's from the Police and Crime Commissioner, you know, the Welsh Government, Local Government Association, or central government. An example of something that's come out recently are the changes to domestic homicide review. Within Wales, we're looking at the single unified safeguarding review. So I've been part of that kind of working group then to see how that is going to work in Wales. What does that mean for a local authority? So we're very much involved in lots of those things that will have an impact on how we deliver services and that as a local authority. The Safer Torfaen partnership, we horizon scan to just see if there are any, if there's new legislation that's coming in, especially the ones we've talked quite a lot around vaping and that this morning, but the legislation that's coming in around that, how does that kind of affect that, and what can we do as a partnership then to support and implement that? So we do spend quite a lot of time getting involved in consultations and making sure that that's fit for purpose, whether that's fit for the Welsh landscape, but actually in different localities, our need in Torfaen can be very different to that in perhaps Newport and Monmouthshire. So sometimes we don't always want a Gwent perspective. We need to put forward what we think, how that works for us. So we get very involved in those consultations to make sure that they kind of they feed into our partnership, but also our partnership feeds back out to that.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, then, members, I don't know if anybody has got any recommendations on Safer Torfaen's actions on vaping. No hands up. Okay.
Just for me, very quickly. Obviously, it's a new area of crime, really. It's something that's hit us hard in the last couple of years, and it's something that we're all working together and we're all learning from. And it's what really you see as a success. What is a success? Okay, so is it, you know, that we stop all pop-up shops linked to OCGs? Is it that we stop complete sales of vapes to schools, to school children? Is it stop funding to OCGs? Is it stop antisocial behaviour towards children? So all these things are coming together, and it's a huge project. But I think the main thing is we safeguard those children. So it's kind of what we're doing at the moment is trying to shut down the pop-up shops, trying to stop the funds to the OCGs, and trying to stop these children being influenced by the OCGs and the sale of that. So I think that's initially what we're looking at as a team. but obviously there's other strands to it as we progress. So it's just to let you know, from my personal point of view, certainly not just this area, all areas, it's kind of a new thing that we're tackling here, and OCGs really are on form with this. They're making millions and millions of pounds out of children, essentially. So we are on it, and we are trying to tackle this issue, but it's a bit of a monster that we are trying to do. But at the moment, trading standards, the work Statu's doing, the team here are doing, it is really, really good, and leaders really in trying to stop the problem. So I just thought I'd step in there.
So could it be said that you really need a subcommittee within your organisation just for one subject of vaping because of the progression of where it's going? Do you need more hands-on to it to deal with the impact of what you've clearly demonstrated in the conversation?
We've set up teams in other sections specifically targeting vapes and vape shops, but it's how you wish to tackle that issue, essentially. I'm not sure whether a subcommittee, you've got one there, but you've already got one set up, but I mean, you know, I think in other areas they have, and it's beneficial. Other areas have got teams set up, so yeah, it is something we do take really seriously, and it is a big issue for us.
Sorry, Chair, if I can just explain quickly our subgroup. So because it was a priority of Safer Torfaen, we set up a vaping subgroup. I think we've got almost 20 partners from different agencies with on it. The action plan is an Excel spreadsheet full of 6 pages and, you know, so many different actions. Torfaen, we took it upon ourselves to set up that group because we were concerned with what we were seeing in our schools. There's colleagues in Gwent asking us now to share with them what we've done. So while police are focusing on the hard-end OCGs, we're looking at prevention, we're looking at training, we're looking at the health implications, we're looking at posters, you know, we're doing soft campaigns, we're doing surveys with young people. So that it's a huge piece of work that is ongoing. And whilst it might not be a priority for Safer Torfaen to free up other priorities, that work is very much our day-to-day business.
So it's just a shame that we didn't have this kind of policy going around when Mr Walter Riley came into the country with tobacco all those years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, and thank you very much, Chief Inspector, for your input there. We now move on to violence reduction in schools. And in question 19, it was agreed that local work was required to ensure early prevention of the trend becoming prevalent in Torfaen. The question is, how will we be able to evidence that the local work has had an impact and prevented the trend becoming prevalent in Torfaen?
Thanks, Councillor. So again, this is part of our reducing violence and serious violence within schools work, which sits within our MAPI meeting that we've discussed before. And it's just identifying early the risk factors to young people being involved in violence and serious violence, which is your antisocial behaviour. It's, you know, it can be parents with alcohol issues, low attendance, and some of the adverse childhood experiences we see. So the local work that we do is mentoring. Some of the work we've got St Giles to come in and work with young people around exploitations and risk to exploitations. And to measure that, again, we just look at the individual and the journey. We've got a targeted group just to see if they escalated in our process, if they've been involved in anything with the police. So if none of that's happened, then that's measured as a success.
Can I just add to that?
Yes, certainly.
One of the things that we've been working on are our own individual service plan for each directorate. And you know, we've got measures in there around reducing antisocial behaviour. Kath gave some examples of some strike letters that have been sent out. We track the progress if they move through the system. But that's something that we're really trying to focus on is how can we prove that that intervention has worked? We think it's worked. There's a leap of faith by assuming that that young person, if they're not coming back into our world or to the police work, that our intervention has worked. But it's trying to find those measures, and if you've got ideas on how we can kind of look at those, of the intervention, of tracking those, it's always something that comes up, and that's something we're always trying to improve. How can we really prove that we've done that our intervention has worked longer term and that? So that is something that we're looking at as a directorate within our own kind of service planning and that going forward. But yeah, that is something that we come across a lot, to just go, how can we prove we feel we know that, but how can we make that a tangible result?
Okay, thank you very much. Move on to question 20, inviting Councillor Linda Clarkson.
Thanks, Chair. 4.4.5 of the report, the Gwent Violence Reduction Group. And this is a little bit of a roundabout question. Basically, the essence of what I'm trying to sort of glean is how and when best practice and lessons learned are shared amongst this group and other groups. I know I'm aware of a report coming out soon that's a collaboration in Newport, understanding the triggers. Are we linking into that and gleaning the information from that? We mentioned earlier that there's that neighbourhood group within, I believe that was piloted in Blaenau Gwent and is now being sort of rolled out along the Greater Gwent area. And Blaenau Gwent have now taken on some community safety wardens, which links into the problems of antisocial behaviour crossover from school into the community. So that would be addressing that. So are we looking at the impact and the potential for these things that were being trialled elsewhere to work within Torfaen?
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, we work very closely with our community safety counterparts in other areas in Gwent to share information. Just in terms of the violence, I sit on the Gwent Violence Reduction Group, as do my counterparts in other local authorities. So we share their different interventions that we're using. So we've been using the police service to do some work with younger children, and Blaenau Gwent are interested in doing that. So, we're sharing our ideas on what works and what doesn't. Newport, the report that they're writing, again, that's sitting underneath the Gwent group that we're doing, so that we've asked them to do that piece of work. But understanding the triggers links to understanding the causes and the risk factors behind the violence, which is something we've looked at in developing our serious violence strategy anyway, with the Gwent needs assessment. So we do share information. The project that Blaenau Gwent are doing, looking at between the link between schools and the community, it mirrors our MAPI, which is something that we've shared with them in the past, but they've now got some funding for some wardens, which we don't have. So we use Positive Futures. Is there anything you want to come in and say about Blaenau?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was responsible for implementing or setting up with the CSB a task force, so to speak, which is what I think you're talking about in relation to Blaenau Gwent, which has won awards nationally, and also setting up the community wardens there. The community wardens are a little bit difficult. It's based on funding, really. So that's a bonus. We did have a particular problem within Blaenau Gwent in a certain section where community wardens have helped, but it's all about funding and getting that set up, and that does take some time. But the task force is something that I've spoken to Mr. Statch about, and we will look to progress probably with yourselves. It is about information sharing between the groups. We've got very similar systems set up. They kind of do the same thing, but it's just sharing that information, presenting ideas amongst ourselves, and seeing if any new approaches would help the different sections. So it's certainly something that we are looking to bring across the table. I know other sections of Caerphilly are looking at implementing the task force as well. So it's just getting together, using everybody else's ideas and seeing what's best for this section. But in relation to community wardens, it's more about funding. The task force is something mainly around civil orders and things like that, individuals that are just on the periphery of coming into problems or committing crime, not necessarily the top offenders, because we talk about those quite a lot in these meetings. It's the ones that are just on the periphery, that just might be coming to that age where they're getting influenced by these individuals. And it's essentially, for want of a better word, picking those individuals off and trying to help them look at a different way. And I know it was touched on earlier, what success, how to measure it and things like that, but if we can just get one of those individuals to stop committing crime or causing antisocial behaviour or criminal damage, which is often what antisocial behaviour is really, the businesses or shops, if we can stop that early, it makes a hell of a difference to us all. So that's what that project was set up for, but I know you've got similar ones. So,
Thank you. Just to bring it onto a Torvine's perspective, we have our Community Safety Hub, which is basically our task force. So we look at all those things across the communities and individuals and our strike process. All the information sharing agreements are in place and they're well attended by partners from housing, environmental health, colleagues in neighbourhood policing. And in terms of the community warden funding, we did have something similar, but we used it for extra outreach workers for youth staff. So rather than the wardens on the street, it's basically the same but with a youth focus to engage young people, try and get them back into the hub and to CCYP and more positive activities. So the ideas are shared. We are all doing very similar, but we do learn from each other. We do meet regularly to discuss what's going on in other areas in Gwent.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I believe we've got another question. Question 21, Councillor Clarkson.
I have, thank you, Chair. 4.4.6 of the report states new methods of data gathering in schools were explored to target main issues, but further work is required with education for a more robust method of data gathering on violence in schools. So when is this likely to progress? Are schools sharing best practice again with each other? What role does Safer Torfaen have in developing actions and sharing amongst schools, especially considering local issues that have arisen in recent weeks?
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, so we are looking at how schools share data with us and our team on operational issues within schools. At the moment, it's quite reliant on the head teacher or the safeguarding leads to send us our information. We are getting information from the local authorities' education in terms of fixed-term exclusions and permanent exclusions, so we can see where we need to focus some of our interventions. Each comprehensive school has a MAPI meeting, so we've got a uniformed approach to tackling antisocial behaviour in schools, and we've got a uniform approach in monitoring our strike process for young people in school who are on our strike process. So there's lots of support there. It is definitely a priority for me and my team, I think, to start looking at schools, looking at the data. We put in so many interventions into our schools that we need to make sure that the right schools get in the right interventions and that resources are spent in the best possible way.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dave Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. So, are there plans to introduce training or resources for educators to improve data collection and response strategies related to school violence?
I think that's something that we would discuss with education colleagues themselves to kind of answer on that. You'd hope that is something that we're moving towards. But I don't know if that is a plan. We could pick that up with Jason O'Brien to see if that's something that we can join conversations with around schools and that. We need to kind of link up data better, but I won't be able to answer on behalf of education on that one.
Do you think that that's something that we should be looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever something goes wrong, it always comes back to the lack of sharing of information or data and that. So if there's anything that we can kind of do to link those data sets within the MAPI meetings, and I know you've had scrutiny sessions on MAPI and that before, there's lots of that work, but it depends on the relationships within that school of linking in with the team. So it's not across the board, but having those shared data systems, and that could absolutely, like I said earlier, track that journey of the child through education if they're in social care, youth offending service or not, hopefully, to look at that data set better.
So that could be a good recommendation then from the committee.
Yeah, I mean, how much authority we'd have to do that, but to look into that, and, you know, if there are any ways that we could explore that, or you were saying about sharing best practice. You know, if that works in other areas really well, let's find out more about that. So we'd be absolutely welcome to know if that works elsewhere that we can replicate.
Okay, thank you very much. And at this point then, members, have you got any recommendations to put forward about Safer Torvine's actions on violence reduction in schools?
Yeah, so we've got that with Becky. Oh, great.
All right, thank you very much. We move on now to, we've got 4 concluding questions. I think most of it is questioned by Councillor Linda Clarkson. So, question, if you want to ask your 3 questions, Councillor Clarkson, then I'll come in with the last one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Chair. We have covered some of this, but I just wanted to sort of get a little bit more clarity at the end of the meeting. 4.5.1 of the report states that since the inception of Safer Torvine, there have been no real barriers that have been identified. But we've spoken about some of them within that. So to clearly identify barriers seems like a good way forward to improve sort of actions and outcomes. So has there been any? Have we identified now any barriers in terms of access to information, difficulty in measuring outcomes, or participation with partners?
Thanks, Councillor. When we were looking at this, whether we were just, you know, we're just very happy with the way things are working and our relationships with our partners and that, we really thought about the partnerships, and we were like, what are barriers? We really couldn't see the barriers that we were facing. But sometimes that's because you perhaps don't really know that there is a barrier because you haven't perceived it yet. So I think we've touched on data and the sharing of that kind of information. As a partnership, we share information. We have our own WASPI data sharing agreement. That's for the Community Safety Hub, but for the partnership itself. So there's no concern or barrier to the free-flowing information between our partners, especially with Gwent Police having PC Sean Wigley, the CADGO, based with our team. That information, you know, those kind of things we don't have barriers to at all. But I think really around sharing it wider, sharing it long-term, and tracking those kind of progress, I think, you know, is kind of a potential barrier that we could kind of look at. And I don't think it's so much a barrier, but I think there are definite improvements that we need to be able to make within that area, I would say.
So maybe a little bit more work just done in identifying some of the more discrete difficulties, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, Kath has written this report and pulled all the information and that together. But I think maybe that's something that we need to go back to Safer Torvine and say, maybe partners feel that there is a barrier, maybe there is something, maybe we're missing something, that there's better ways of doing things. Lots of our partners are regional, you know, Gwent Police, ABUHB, probation are Wales-wide that sit on the partnership. You know, maybe there's something within that they think is a bit of a barrier or room for improvement. So I think, you know, it may be, members may want to kind of recommend that we perhaps go back to the partnership and ask that if there are any potential barriers or room for improvement within the partnership that they see.
Okay, thanks. I think the next question I had has pretty much been covered within the conversations that we've had, as has 25. So I think we'd just be going into duplicating questions if I ask those. So I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clarkson. Okay, I know a final question then. Future priorities for Safer Torvine will be determined using local data and information. When will priorities be reviewed, is the one question, and do the priorities selected by Safer Torvine need to be approved by any other body within the governance structure?
We've we've given Future Torvine, that's something else we're doing, the future priorities for Safer Torvine, a lot of thought recently, and I think hopefully you'll be aware of our new HDRC, our Health Determinants Research Collaboration, that we're embedding within the local authority. So we've got a team now set up to look at data and the story behind that. So they've gone out and done, which members may have been involved in, around the consultation around what should be the priorities to make Torvine a better place to live. What are the priorities? What are the wellbeing objectives for the local communities in their area? So through that, community safety was one of those key areas that kind of came out. Antisocial behaviour was a key area that came out. So what we want to try to do is to utilise that team to see what are the community saying, what are they saying are the priorities for them within their community that they think that we need to kind of address, and look at the to try to research the rationale behind some of the reasons of why things are the way they are. Some of the things that came out, as I said, was antisocial behaviour, but one of the other areas of focus that came out was around domestic abuse. So although we have the Vowdor SB team that are set up to lead on that, it's a priority within Gwent Police. We've now got evidence that has come through the HDRC process, that is something that the community and partners and stakeholders are saying is a priority. So we will take all of that kind of information ourselves and say, is there something that's coming forward as that, for example, like domestic abuse, that we need to look at as a partnership that may kind of form that one of those kind of future priorities. Members have touched upon, is there any, if you kind of have priorities that you think would be something within your communities, whether that's, related to, adults or young people, or something that we're thinking that perhaps hasn't kind of featured, we'd welcome those conversations and that as well, if we think that there's something around that. Just around setting the priorities, the timescales and that, I think Safer Torvine, I think, was established in September. I just don't think when the action plans run from time to time.
So, yeah, we started in September, so by the time we set up, it was really January, but we could stick to financial years. So now we'll be looking at our plans for 25 to 27. However, it is a fluid document, so if there's something emerging that comes in, the priority can change. If we've dealt with it, it doesn't need to stay on because it's a 2-year kind of plan. It's better, we'd rather it be more reactive to the issues rather than, waste time basically working on something that doesn't need to be looked at.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the members' questioning. I would very much like to thank our officers, Kate and Kath, and Chief Inspector Stevie and Inspector Lee Stasho. Is that right this time? All right, get in there. It's only because he kept calling him Stash. All right, so for your input and very good answers to the questions. And if you want to sum up, any of you, entirely up to you. And if not, I'm going to invite you to leave.
You're not requesting us to leave, you can invite us to. I just really wanted to thank you all for your time. And, the scrutiny sessions that we have, we get a lot from. It is that wider thinking. We can work in our own kind of a bubble and that, but to kind of have members' views of how we can kind of progress things or maybe do a deeper dive into, we really appreciate your time and your efforts of putting those forward and those recommendations, and we look forward to hearing those. I really wanted to thank Lee and Stevie for your input and your continued support with this, and also our community safety team that put in all the work behind the scenes then, but a huge thank you from us.
Chair, just one very, very quick point from me. I would like to publicly thank the Community Safety Partnership, because it's clear that we couldn't collectively achieve what we've achieved on our own. I think we've made some really, really positive inroads in Torvine, and the team are really, really committed, and I think we're lucky to have a team set up like that in Torvine. So on behalf of me and Gwent Police, thanks for all your help. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Stevie?
Yeah, it's just a thank you from me. I've really enjoyed this meeting, some good answers, good subjects raised, but if anything, we were talking about prior to the meeting, it's just some excellent work goes on here, and I see what happens in other sections as well, some really good work, and it's just probably communicating that a little bit better and probably showing Torfaen a little bit off a bit more and putting that good work out there so people can see what you're doing, because they really are leaders in relation to vapes. They're ahead of the game a little bit there, dealing with antisocial behaviour, certainly Pontypool, Cymraeg, those areas, Blaenavon particularly. I started in Pontypool many years ago. It was my first stage, so I worked for about 4 or 5 years, so I do know the issues you face, and I think it's just you do some excellent work, some real good answers, you know, and this team particularly is well thought of. And I think it's just getting those good work messages out there so everyone can see what you're doing. But thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, thank you all very much. Right, members, can I please remind you that the meeting is still in formal proceedings and still being webcast. Can I refer you now to the scrutiny activity and invite you to offer your recommendations? So I'll hand over to Rebecca now, who will formulate the recommendations on this.
Thank you, Chair. So if I can just remind members of the scrutiny activity for following your session today. So the members of the Adults and Communities ONS Committee are invited to consider the content of the report and determine whether Safer Torfaen is fulfilling its statutory duties under the Crime and Disorder Act 1998, to determine whether Safer Torfaen is having a positive impact on communities in Torfaen, and then offer your comments and recommendations to the Executive Member for Corporate Governance and Performance on what considerations could be undertaken as part of the 2025-2026 action plan. So if I can hand over to members, first of all, if you'd like to put forward anything before I summarise the recommendations that you formulated during discussion.
I just think that was a really very positive scrutiny meeting today. There was a lot of positive comments around the table. It was really good. I've never, to be quite frank, that was one of the best scrutiny meetings I've been to in a long time. It was good. The answers were clear and precise, and they were all very, very positive in the way that they're spoken about. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. You might have to help me out here, Bex. So the one question I asked was about addressing the gaps collection, especially in schools. So I don't know if we could put a recommendation forward to see if they could come up with a system that will help them collect data, especially in schools, to measure the better measure violence and vapes. And then the other one I've got, which I don't know if this could be done, what Kate was asking about, what the communities are really looking for. I can't speak for everyone's community, obviously, but something that we've been looking at in our ward for a long time is the introduction of youth clubs again. Like I said before, I hate the term antisocial behaviour. I prefer to call it childhood boredom, because I think the majority of them are just bored and they like watching the entertainers kick off. So that would be something I would be looking to see if we could really push forward to bring youth clubs back to Torfaen.
So with regards to that recommendation, it would be a bit difficult on this one, because youth clubs wouldn't per se come under community safety team or Kate's world, but that's not to say that you can put a recommendation that they liaise with the appropriate service area to look at interventions and whether that is an intervention that Safer Torfaen could consider exploring. Is that okay? Yeah.
Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Linda Clarkson.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I've got a sticky mic button. Unfortunately, please forgive me for being a bit slow taking it off. I think the biggest thing that has come out of this for a recommendation is that there is a vast amount of work going on, but even as members, we're not always aware of what's happening, and the public certainly may not be. There is one of the policing priorities is raising confidence in policing within the Gwent area. It's a priority for all local authorities, I'm sure. So we really have got a lot of work to do in sort of informing the public about all of the good work that is actually going on. How that could be done is the difficulty, because it is such a massive area to cover. But that really has jumped out, I think, to all of us, that it needs to be sort of better handled and better done. The other thing that I'm wondering is whether or not there's anything that can be done via licensing when it comes to antisocial behaviour, vaping, sale of alcohol, that type of thing. Whether there needs to be more partnership work in it. It's not often in licensing that you see representations from the other statutory organisations, so whether that could be something that could be looked at. And possibly...
Sorry, Councillor Clarkson, just to come in it, so perhaps if we pose that as a recommendation about considering whether licensing should be one of those associated members or a part of that Safer Torvain, is that okay? Is that
to work alongside trading standards.
Yeah.
Particularly, I know there's a close partnership there already, but that might be something to explore. And the other would be that maybe this would be a subject that would do well for a member seminar to raise awareness amongst members.
I've got to agree with Linda on that. I think a seminar right now to outline what they do and how they do it to get more members on board to understand what's happening now would be beneficial. I really do. With regard to the recommendations I put in, I presume they're already in place.
Yeah, so just quickly to run through anything that was discussed through the meeting that you haven't then raised. So there was the recommendation from yourself, Councillor Horler, with regards to littering coming under that overarching umbrella of antisocial behaviour. There was also one that hasn't been picked up, but they talked a lot about linking systems, specifically with like the youth offending service, and again going back to education. So whether that is as a priority for Safer Torvain to take that forward. You've just raised the one about more proactive communication on positive news stories. Councillor Thomas has reiterated the recommendation then about this school's data. And that was it, Chair, that I picked up.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much, members, for attending the meeting and making it a good scrutiny meeting at that as well. We'll just now move on to agenda item 7, which is the date of the next meeting. And the next meeting will be on Thursday, the 20th of February at 4 p.m. Like I say, once again, thank you for your attendance and contributions. All that remains for me to do now is to close the meeting and enjoy the rest of your day all.